This is Across the Pond Wargamers, Episode 3, Keeping It Relevant. Good day and welcome to Across the Pond Wargamers. Today's show, we have as our guests members of the Oldmeldrum Wargames Club, Oldmeldrum Wargames Group. I'll get the name right here, so you'll forgive me for that. Colin and I would like to welcome Ross, Stuart, and Mike from the club, and welcome to our show, gentlemen.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Good. Well, we're glad to see you, and the topic we'll be talking about, on later on, is keeping a club going before, during, and after the age of COVID-19. One of the things that had me reach out to you folks, of course, first we stumbled across you guys from your Blue Shirt scenarios that you put on your club forum, which are fantastic. Thank you very much. We're still working on putting together Leipzig. So great scenarios, great work on those. But I also noticed that you guys have a tendency to have some regular meetings. You seem to have people engaged in the club. It seems to be a good club, an active club, which is something that in this day and age is under a lot of challenges. So that's something we want to talk about a little bit later on to get your input on that. So, but what we have some typical formats we start off with. The first things we're going to do is we kind of talk about, and I've kind of changed the format a little bit, because when we talk about your introductions, your personal introductions, I want to get the history of the club, and that'll feed into the topic itself. So we're going to start off with basically what have we all been working on? What are the activities we've been engaged in? For Colin and I know we've been doing a lot with and trying to get figures ready for Leipzig and terrain and all the pieces there. So my painting is going extremely slowly. But we won't talk about that too much. Plus, I've been distracted by a couple of other little things, but that's me. I get distracted. And I'll talk about those on my new and shiny when I get to that area. But Colin, I imagine you're still painting, but you got some new figures to paint.
Yeah. I'm still trying to paint. I'll be honest, this is my second day off since the last podcast. It's been a busy week with work, and I've been doing stuff around the house. But now, I just picked up a few more Indian War stuff, and I have them to paint and prime, and I'm just not helping myself.
Yeah, the lead pile is getting larger. So, as a father, I can talk with pride that my son's lead pile is getting getting almost as large as mine, which is fantastic. Chip off the old block. So, I'm going to go in the order of which I see you guys on the screen and start with Ross. What have you been working on? What are your activities in the last while?
So mostly I've been doing things on Tabletop Simulator for Blucher. Been playing around with the Leipzig scenario, doing the cards and uploading things onto Tabletop Simulator for that. So that's been keeping me busy. Also been doing bits and pieces with some naval wargaming, again, for the Tabletop Simulator. So, but obviously due to the lockdown and the restrictions we've got on travel over here, it's pretty much all the gaming we can do just now. So yeah, that's been keeping me busy.
How do you find that Tabletop Simulator? I haven't been able to play around with it as much as I'd like to. I want to try and figure it out, but how do you find it?
Yeah, it took a while for us to get used to it. I mean, I've been on there now for about 6 or 7 months, so yeah, I've had a lot of playing about with it to get used to the mechanics of it. Yeah, used to the way it works. Obviously, some of the other guys are a bit newer to it, so I think it's a steep learning curve if you haven't used it before. But once you get there, it's pretty good.
Okay, Stuart, what about you?
I have been pottering away on some 16th century stuff. I decided I suddenly found myself with a lot more time on my hands than I had planned. Let's just leave it at that. And I've always wanted to do stuff based on some of the things that went on during the Reformation. in northeast Scotland. We've got a bit of quite a rich history up here. It's the perfect excuse to let that Wargames butterfly just go wherever it wants to. So yeah, I've been painting some Highland Scots and some of the noble families from round about here, and working on a few other bits and pieces.
Okay. Okay. Mike?
Yeah. I paint quite a lot, and just recently I've discovered some early World War II French motorbike troops. So, as you mentioned, the lead pile grows ever bigger. So I've finished painting those up the other day. So they're going to be quite good fun. In fact, I've just set up a scenario my son and I will be playing after this. So very much, yeah, early World War II French scenarios at the moment. And obviously with a shutdown, I've been looking into the pile in the garage, and I've discovered a whole bunch of British and Russians, Napoleonic. So I finished the Napoleonic Russians the other day, and looking at starting some British. So that'll be interesting.
Okay, that's it's nice to find some of the. Everybody finds the popular periods, the real, late war, World War II, or Waterloo, things like that. I like the Stuart with your 15th century, Mike, talking about the early French. Those are some of the periods I like that have just a little bit different flavor to them. And I do I like naval wargaming too, and I can't seem to get as many people into it as I'd like to. So, but oh well. Yeah, we're pretty good on that stuff. What we do now, we kind of move into is talking about what we've seen that are, we call it new and shiny. And our parameters around new and shiny is it's new and shiny to us, or it's something we dug out of a box that, ooh, I didn't know I had these type things, which we seem to find a lot of. But lately, I stumbled across, well, actually, I shouldn't say I stumbled across. I was listening to a podcast called The Veteran Wargamer, which is a podcast I enjoy listening to. And they were talking about with Two Fat Lardy's release of Kriegspiel and some of the Kriegspiel games in that. And that is something that's kind of caught my eye. So I got a copy of that and started reading through that. So that's kind of one of my new and shinies. The other one then is Firelock Games released it, I guess, back in January, a set of rules called Blood and Valor, which are World War I skirmish rules. Not big battle trench, but skirmish rules. Small unit. Now, I've played their Blood and Plunder, which is pirates, which late 1600s, early 1700 pirates, which is it's a fun game night game. Okay, it's just a fun game night game. So found this, taking a look at it. The rules seem pretty interesting. I've got a bunch of 20 millimeter Turks and Russians that have never been dusted off that I might see how they play with that. So that's kind of my new. Oh, the other new and shiny, I just got some of the Adler 6 millimeter Napoleonic personalities, which those are some nice miniatures. Nice miniatures. And I'm going to have somebody who paints a lot better than I do paint them for me so I can make it look good. But we'll go ahead. We'll do Colin, then Ross, Stuart, and Mike. So Colin, I know yours.
Wow. I'm ashamed. I can't really think of anything right now. I've just been so busy. Yeah, because I'm also starting up roller hockey season, so I've been getting into that, and I've left the hobby alone since I'm working as well. I have to pass the torch here.
Yeah.
Shame when life gets in the way, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Colin's they've just come back to work after, how long are you guys on shutdown? You were on shutdown for 4 or 6 weeks?
Yeah, like a month and a half.
Yeah, and, doing all his work from home and that. So now he's back at the office. And, of course, in the job he's in, working from home is a lot of it's just, 1 hour of paperwork and 5 hours of twiddling your thumbs. And then going back to the work is suddenly you're working all 6 weeks worth of work have to be done in 2 or 3. So yeah, it's fun stuff. Yeah. And myself, I always work from home. My job has me working from home. So for me, I've got it down to a science. So this has been no disruption to me at all, which I feel guilty saying. But we've been fortunate in my space. Ross, new and shiny.
New and shiny. Well, just before the shutdown, sort of early March, February time, we as a club got together. We're looking at doing Rommel by Sam Mustafa, getting into the Rommel set of rules. So we as a club, we've been to the Normandy battlefields a couple of times over the last few years. So we were looking at doing the Gold Juno sword, which with Rommel is a monster scenario. We picked up on the Little Wars TV. They did a scenario earlier last year of the whole of the Normandy campaign, slightly larger scale units, but we were looking at doing that. So yeah, we were ordering up the figures for that, and they arrived just as everything went into lockdown and the bases. So yeah, I'm going to be organising. We've got the little lead pile, 6mm. We're going to be doing it in. So that arrived the other week. So we're going to get that divided up into the little packets and sent across to our painter Mike to get that started on.
Hey, all right, Stuart, you.
I'm waiting to receive some of the new figures that have come out from Wargames Atlantic. I had some of the old Wargames Factory Persians, and I'm looking forward to seeing the like cousins of those, or whatever the relationship between the two companies is, and see what Wargames Atlantic do. I think they'll be an excellent match. You can keep your hoplites. You need an enemy for those, and there's nothing like the Persians for that. And I'm also doing 7 Years' War Marines landing parties and Spanish militia for stuff I'm working on for the British invasion of Cuba as well. So Clan Tara have taken out some lovely figures, and I'm working with them to come out with some British sepoys for the invasion of the Philippines. So some really obscure stuff.
If you like obscure battles and obscure collections of miniatures, Stuart's your man.
I love it. I love it. I think it's great. Doing the common thing, as I said, doing the common things are fun, but when you can find those little ones that are just really off, it makes it so much more fun, because you're not only learning about it, but the normal way of gaming or the normal tactics don't always work. You have to apply the thinking of the period and get you to think a little differently, which I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah. So a chap called John Ray introduced me to the British campaigns in the Caribbean during the 7 Years' War. And I've got a book out called Wargaming the Sugar Islands Campaign, which I thought I was going to sell a couple of dozen copies of. And
what's it called?
It's just called Wargaming the Sugar Islands Campaign.
Okay. I will put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. And if you're into obscure,
that's interesting. We were talking about this very subject, and throughout the rule development that Stuart was doing with the club, he brought along the game and running through the rule set. And it actually suddenly occurred to me, I was so busy with everything else that I actually haven't had a game yet. So when we finally get around to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going to look into. That sounds very interesting. Excuse me. Mike, you're up.
Yeah, okay. So you won't know, but I recently had a significant birthday. So my mate and I were both birthdays at the same time. So we treated ourselves to a couple of board games. We haven't actually mentioned board games, but board games are a big thing for me. It's what I sort of started out at. So new and shiny G&T games, Holland 44 and Ardennes 44. Hex
Yep.
games. Run through the Holland 44, and it's perhaps one of the best simulations of the Operation Market Garden. You know, the airborne drops and the core. So if you're into board gaming, World War II, that's the cracker.
Well, we Colin and I started playing around with, or started getting interest about the campaigns leading up to Leipzig, and I stumbled across the old SPI board game Leipzig, and found a little copy. Sent it to Colin. He's played a couple games of it solo. So I picked up a copy, and we keep meaning to do a play via portal with each of us having the board game because I used to play board games all the time. I don't remember Third Reich, the old SPI Third Reich game, and Tactics was a one that got, I think, the first board game I ever did. Things like that. So yeah. So when you had your 30th birthday and got that new game, I mean, that was a pretty big deal, right?
The 30th times two. Yeah.
Second 30th birthday, yeah.
What a smooth talker.
Yeah, right. Well, we haven't actually had a party yet. I'm sure we all do because it's right in the middle of lockdown. But going back to Leipzig, we have a number of board games, Pratzen editions, and they do a wonderful rendition of Leipzig. But you're talking about, I think it's about 10 maps of about 2 foot by 18 inches, a massive game.
And who was this again?
Pratzen editions.
It's
Pratzen.
Didier Roy, I think. The guy.
Didier, yeah, the Frenchman
based in, I think he's California now.
Yeah.
One of the things.
Well, I'll send you an email with it on if you want.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, guys, some of the things I like to do here are things that people mention that are, they mention favorably, like, we mentioned, War Games Atlantic, you mentioned Waterloo, you've talked about the GMT games and the Pratzen edition. I like to put these in my show notes and for links so people who listen can look at these vendors, because I really feel it's important for us to promote vendors within the hobby and kind of get that information out there to help grow the hobby. I mean, that's a big deal for all of us, which, that kind of goes, to me, it's reason why we're doing the podcast. One, I love talking about the hobby. But two, just getting information out there and finding out more about it and different ways of gaming. You talk about Wargaming the Sugar Islands campaign. I love the type of obscure stuff. But I've been to some of the Sugar Islands. I've seen the British forts. I've seen the Spanish forts. I've seen those, but I've never thought about, how could we game that one? But that could be interesting there. So I like to put these type of notes to help promote things and get the information out there. With that, I'm going to move into kind of more into our introductions and formally introducing our guests. We have a kind of a set standard of how we introduce guests, which I've quite frankly stolen, plagiarized, copied, whatever term you want to use from the old Meeples and Miniatures podcast, which is no longer on a regular basis. And so if, they want to chastise me, they can. But what we do is talk about how you started in the hobby and what your interests are. And since you're new guests, you're going to be on the spot for that. So again, I'm going to shake it up. I'm going to start with Mike, Stuart, and then Ross. All right. We'll kind of go in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So Mike, tell us how you started in the hobby and what your interests are.
Gosh, how did I start in the hobby? I think like all small boys, we watch. There used to be a black and white program on television, Desert Rats, I think it was called. So as me and my mates as kids as children used to reenact the various scenarios on our push bikes and all the rest of it.
So you blew up Tiger tanks with Browning 30 calibers on the back of your jeans?
Yeah, that's the baby.
I remember that show well.
At the time, Airfix, if you remember Airfix models, the small 00 figures, 20 mil, I guess they are now. So sort of starting off with boxes of those every Saturday with your pocket money, or buying a wee aircraft or something like that. And I guess it sort of grew from that. I mentioned my friend. We often joke about some of our gardens back in the places where we used to live. I'm sure people digging those gardens up now will probably find hundreds of different small figures, as we've reenacted Waterloo or something like that, or Guadalcanal. So I guess that's really where it started, and I've never really lost that enthusiasm for it. I love painting. You probably see that painting behind me. That's sort of one I did from it's actually the Forth Rail Bridge down in Edinburgh. Right,
famous bridge. Seen it myself.
Yeah, so that was done it's not. That's actually, I've done that for somebody else. But so painting has always been a big thing with me, and then the historical aspect of it as well. Yeah, I was fascinated by history, fascinated on how things work, why they did the things that they did. What armor they used, what weapons they used, etc. So I guess that's really that's sort of grown and grown and grown. And it's I guess we're all going to admit it's addictive. Yeah.
It is. And so again, Mike, your intro to the hobby has been pretty much similar to Gentlemen of a Certain Age.
Indeed, yes.
Yes, I'm almost identical, except for a couple introductions from my grandfather. Got me introduced to some of it, but same thing. Airfix figures, Tractics. Remember the Roco mini tanks?
Yes, absolutely.
Those were good ones. But Stuart, let's go on to you. How'd you get your start in the hobby? What are your interests?
I was always interested in. I think my dad introduced me to Norse and Greek mythology, and from that I was quite interested in history. And my local library had the Funken books on uniforms, which I thought were amazing. But they also had Peter Connolly's books on Greece and Rome, the Carthaginians, the Celts. So quite a well-stocked kids reference section. On the shelf directly above those, there was a book by Donald Featherston called Wargames. And once I had the toy soldiers that were in the books, and I found this one, that was it. There was no looking back. It took me years to convince my friends to play. I got diverted into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff for a while because I couldn't get them to play wargaming. But I think from about 15, 16, once I found some people that were interested, I've never really looked back. And like Mike mentioned, it's about what happened, how it happened, who was involved. I'm less interested specifically in the uniforms than the history, the whole campaign. I think I'd probably be a Berthier than a Napoleon. I wouldn't be an Alexander. I'd be I can't remember the name of his Greek general. Unions, rather his secretary, rather than Alexander. That's what motivates me. But the history really is my thing, and the fact that you get to play with toy soldiers just caps it all off, because that's all we do. You can dress it up however you like, lads, but we are playing with toy soldiers, and that's all.
Amen. We have our little speech about trying to recreate historical battles through the use of miniatures and simulations, or we say we're playing with toy soldiers. They're really cool. So yeah, it depends on who the audience is and how you sell it, but it's fun. But great. And Ross?
So pretty much the same, playing with toy soldiers when I was a kid, elastic bands and plastic toy soldiers in the bedroom. And then when I was just coming up from primary school into secondary school, so around about 10 years old or so, my mum came home from work one day, said she'd been in past the local library, and there was a little display that she really wanted me to see. So I went up there, and there was a whole line, looked like a company of 15mm British Napoleonic that somebody had painted up, and I was just hooked. Saw that and thought, that's it for me. And it turns out it was Alistair Massey, the one of our members, the oldest member of our club. I shouldn't say that, but the most senior member of our club.
Yes.
So yeah, and that was me. Used to go around to Alistair's house every Tuesday, and that was the beginnings of me joining the club way back. God, that's about almost 30 years ago now. Yeah.
That's a good point, because and I think you just gave me a perfect segue, talking about the most senior member of your club. Give us history of the club. What is the history of Oldmeldrum? The Oldmeldrum Wargames Group, and that's to all three of you gentlemen.
So I think the Oldmeldrum part of it sort of started off about 10 years or so ago, Mike. I think we sort of before Oldmeldrum, we were based in mainly in Peterhead, the northeast of Scotland, about 30 miles north of Aberdeen. It started life as the Buchan Wargames Group, and there used to be an RAF station up near Peterhead, RAF Buchan, and a lot of the guys from the RAF base used to wargame, and it started that was the nucleus of the club. And like I say, I joined into that about 30 years ago, but it had been on the go for about 10 years or so prior to that with Alistair and various other members. And yeah, just through life, people sort of growing up, moving out, and the like, we eventually realised that we'd sort of migrated to the village of Oldmeldrum. So we felt a name change was in order to better reflect where we were actually based now, and hence that was the birth of Oldmeldrum Wargames Club.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's the discussion about what we were going to be called went on for some time. We were trying to get some quite funky names, but in the end, we just went very basic. We felt as though we weren't, although we are a club, we felt group was more fitting to the what we were really about. And we've grown from just Oldmeldrum to it's not just Oldmeldrum. We have people from other villages around. So, it's probably 15, 20 miles radius of Oldmeldrum. And we meet up on the Tuesdays, and about once a month we do a Sunday. Obviously not at the moment, but a small group. I think there's about 9 of us on the books at the moment. That has varied over the years. We've had quite a few people have moved away, we mentioned the Buchan and Peterhead, so we had a few of their members actually came to us. But once you start getting up to Peterhead, that's a good 30, 40 odd miles away. So that's quite a distance to come. So they've retained their own group up there, and we do meet occasionally. So,
yeah. Stuart, you can add something? I noticed a nod or a smile on a comment or two.
No, I mean we're the main city, Aberdeen, Scotland's third city, is just a few miles down the road, and they have an active wargames club as well. So we've hoovered up quite a lot of the people from the country round about us. I think I was a member of Aberdeen Wargames Club for a long, long time, and just decided that it was a change that meant that I could come home and then go and wargame rather than leaving straight from work and staying in town. So I've enjoyed the move. I mean, we've got a really tight group. We've got a lot of interest lot of interested in different periods and different rule sets, and I think that's what's kept this fresh over the years, that there's always something new comes along, and as a group we're prepared to give it a try, at least, as opposed to sticking with a set of rules come hell or high water. You know, we'll give something a go. We'll try and play games for 3 weeks to give everybody a sort of chance to get used to the rules or remember the rules if they've played again. And I think that works really well for us. I think that's what keeps us together.
Okay, good. Well,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, we're just saying before, with a quick chat before before we started recording this, and I think the area, I mean, Oldmeldrum has a population of what, Mike, a couple of thousand?
Yeah, 2,000-3,000.
Yeah. We've almost got as many followers on the website as people actually stay in the village of Oldmeldrum. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about small villages and stuff like that. So to have a club of, like you say, 10 to 15 members in that area, it's within a 30-mile radius of Oldmeldrum is a bit of an anomaly, I think, compared to perhaps the rest of the world.
Yeah, we've also tried to keep it above 18 members, above the age of 18. I know probably about 10 years ago now, there was quite a lot of school kids trying to get into it. So, we felt that, as we were all working, we're all adults, having that extra commitment to looking after kids was we were there at the club to enjoy ourselves, not bake.
Right.
I think it was one of that sounds very negative, but
no, and actually, I used to be part of the Telford Wargames Club down in Shropshire when we lived there, and they allowed the kids could not be members, but they could attend if they were accompanied by an adult.
Mm.
That was kind of their rules.
Mm.
And a lot of the games were on school nights, but I guarantee you, during the summer months and the summer holidays period, and when there wasn't school, Colin was with me.
Yeah.
The only thing he didn't do is go out to the pub with us afterwards. But yeah, we're talking years ago. And
that's what you tell his mum.
Why is he stumbling back to the room?
Folks, this is being recorded. Be quiet. No, certainly though, it was it's one of those things where there has to be I feel, it's my opinion, and there has to be a dividing line where it's important to get young folks into the hobby, but it's also important not to be a babysitting organization.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that will drive away folks, because not everybody can and has the patience for it. So you understand that. I don't mind having kids around the wargaming table. In fact, I will invite anybody to game with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do understand there's a certain social aspect to the clubs, and it's not just about the game. In my opinion, it's also about who you're gaming with.
Absolutely.
And having that organization there. So, I mean,
and we do have adult conversations. Whether that's politics or talking about a latest film or something like that. So it's
that's it. Latest film. That's it. That's good.
Yeah, it's a bit of a release. It's we see the club is. You go on a Tuesday night, and like we said earlier, we're pushing toys about the tabletop. Let's be frank about it. So it's a release from reality. You can get away from work, other stresses and things in life, especially with the current situation. You can go along on a Tuesday night, throw some dice, and forget about your woes for a wee while, unless you're on the receiving end of low throws. But apart from that, yeah, it's a release. It's a bit of escapism, and yeah. So yeah,
that's a good point. A bit of escapism. Well, let me ask. Let's go right into it then. What makes a good club? What makes your club? What makes your group, your club, however you want to call it? what makes it good? What do you find, what draws you to it?
I think we're really lucky that we've got a small enough group of people that everybody can get involved in a game. Sometimes it's a very, very small group of people, but that's great because it means we can all join in. And we're just big enough so that actually if you want to play your own game, or we can have 3 games on a night. So we've got a sort of like a magic number that works really, really well for us. Don't get me wrong, more members are always welcome, new people, new ideas, all the rest of it. But the number we've hit at the moment means that it's no big deal if somebody wants to join in the game. There's always a bit of room. You might end up with just commander 1 or 2 units, but you'll get a game. And your rules or your period or your whatever will come up in a couple of weeks. And I think that keeps it going and keeps it fresh. We've all got broadly similar ideas. I mean, what wargamers are like. They're like everything from ancient to ultra modern and everything in between. And we've got that interest across our membership as well. So we're small but perfectly formed, We're hitting all the right spots.
Well, so one of the things that you mentioned that you guys were talking about how you vary the games, you try sets of rules for over a period of weeks, and vary that out. That to me sounds like something you do right. What do you think you guys could do better to make the club to improve on that? Or is there anything you can do better?
We've spoken about it a few times. It's I think try to attract new gamers, let gamers know about us a bit more. I mean, we mentioned before this, we've got the same group of guys that we've had for about the last 6 or 7 years, which is good. We're retaining the membership, but we don't seem to add to it very often. So, yeah, possibly getting our name out there a little bit more, getting a little bit more well known. In younger age groups, possibly. Yeah, we possibly do that.
Well, a lot of that goes to promoting the hobby, and I know one of the things we want to talk about is attracting new blood. Each of us have had a different story. Some of us, a family member got us involved. Some of us, passing a library. Some of us finding a book. Playing with the mates in the garden with figures. We all have different ways to do it. But in this day and age, we're all competing with a lot more electronics, a lot more, I don't want to say less imaginative, but more flashy ways of getting, or it's drawing people's attention. So how do we get, how do you guys, or what steps have you taken to try and attract new members? Or how do you get your name out there? How do you do that? And that's the question. That's the $1 million question. I know we'd all love to have a good answer for. We don't, but I mean,
I think there's the way we've traditionally recruited is there are a few wargame shows that we attend. There are 2 fairly local ones just further down the coast. From us that we attend. We put on a display game, we talk to people, we tell people where we are, and we got a lot of interest. We got a lot of interest in the games. But those are people that have also travelled to the show, so they've come from somewhere else in Scotland or the north of England, so they're going home at the end of the day. I think the online stuff that Ross is good at, that's probably the best way to share information nowadays. Once upon a time, you could stand in the bookshop and see someone picking up a book about the American Civil War and go, well, that's quite a good one, and get into conversation. Or stand in the newsagent and see somebody reading Wargames Illustrated or whatever. But now you don't have a chance to have that conversation. So you've got to put it online, and you've got to share information via Facebook or some other social media method or something to get the message out there.
Well, I've got to say, I do enjoy your website, and those. I'll say it again: the scenarios that you've posted on the website are fantastic. They are. It really is a standout. And it does credit to your whole group, because I know those all had to have been play tested and worked on. You guys doing the different things, but they're done very well. So
yeah, just to let you know that is all Ross's work, so he gets credit for that.
Yeah, but I tell you what, I have never seen a wargamer who does that much work behind something that isn't supported by a bunch of other wargamers giving him ideas and motivation and you know,
Absolutely.
listening to his rants and raves about things at the pub.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that. There's
Support, I mean.
All right. Well, how is COVID? I mean, let's switch into the present day. COVID-19. That's obviously impacted your gaming. How are you guys? What are you guys doing to stay a cohesive group during this? What are you doing?
Well, Ross mentioned it earlier on, the tabletop simulator. So we've keep to our regular Tuesday slots, which I think is a decision we made earlier on. Let's keep that slot available Tuesday evenings. Use the tabletop simulator and the likes of Zoom to just have a chat like we're having a chat now. That's very much how we started off. It's nice to see faces. Yeah, it's nice to see expressions, and that has become quite the normal on a Tuesday. We developed or moved into the tabletop simulator, so we're starting that. And I don't like computer games. I much prefer to have the figures on the table. But I realise, and I think we all realise, that we have to change the way that we do things. Tabletop simulator, Ross has put on naval, World War II naval, Japanese, US. We've done the B-17, and what was the other one we did?
B-17 in the skies.
Oh, the Liberator.
Oh yeah.
So those last two, the B-17 and the Liberator, were Avalon Hill. If you remember Avalon Hill board games.
Yep.
Solitaire games, but playing it as a.
Those loaded onto that, and we use that as a crew. So we'll decide where we're sitting in the plane and go through that process, which is great fun, and I think that works.
Yeah.
I think other things were done with the 1776. Which I forget who makes that now. Is it Academy?
Academy.
But again, that's the similar thing that's been uploaded onto that platform. So that does seem to be working quite well.
Yeah. I think we've been keeping it quite light. So we've been doing a lot of the things that are maybe a bit more fun that normally we wouldn't do on a Tuesday night. It's like you say, the B-17, something just a bit more lighthearted, maybe than the usual. Get the miniatures out and spend a whole night slogging over a battle. We're doing something perhaps a bit more lighthearted that people can kind of get into quickly, pick up, play, and just have a bit of fun.
Okay. How do you find the tabletop simulator? I mean, now, Ross, you're setting it all up, so you don't answer this. Stuart and Mike, how do you find tabletop simulator?
Go for it, Stuart.
Well, it's a new one for me. I don't mind board games that are just board games. I think I quite enjoyed the B-17. I think that worked really well. It can be quite fiddly. It can be difficult to manipulate the dice and to roll and to get the charts and the counters and everything working. So if zooming in and out is if you're not that familiar with things, it can be difficult. The naval game we played a few weeks ago, and it's nothing to do with the fact that I got absolutely pasted by the other members of the club. I struggled a bit with that because of the size of the map and the counters and the fact that it's lots of blue and no details as to where we were, etc., etc. So I think some games work on it very well, other games might not, and it's it's about finding something that you're comfortable with, because it is a new way of playing, and it will probably work for everybody, but not necessarily all the same games.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that for me is as a group, when we join up on a Tuesday evening in the flesh, so to speak, we can have maybe 2 or 3 different tables in an evening,
right,
with different groups. Whereas with a tabletop simulator, we have to have one game that fits all. Yeah, one game that everybody can join into. So there's that aspect of it there which doesn't quite. It's good fun and it's great entertainment, but it doesn't quite fulfil that the need. If somebody doesn't want to play Napoleonic, right, and they want to play World War II, or they want to play naval or an aircraft, and then you got there's a compromise there.
Not quite.
But I mean, personally, I mentioned that Holland 44. I played that as a board game, but I've actually had the board game rules out and how they work and the charts, etc., in my hand, rather than trying to fiddle about on the screen trying to find them. So that aspect of it, actually, if you've got the game, it works a lot better, rather than trying to find the rules somewhere on the platform there. So.
Okay. Ross, go ahead. You can jump in now. They've given their opinion, but I've seen you holding your tongue on a few things, so feel free to jump in.
No, I mean what the guys are saying is true. I like I mentioned earlier, I had kind of been on Tabletop Simulator before the whole COVID-19 shutdown, etc. So I had already had an idea of the system, and I sort of dipped in and dipped out every now and then. But since the lockdown came in, I've unfortunately I've been given a bit more free time than I had anticipated. Thanks to the situation, but yes, so I've used that time to go in there and learn the system a bit more than I had. But there's still loads of things in there that I haven't picked up on. It's a huge program, and it's got lots of potential, but it's just figuring out how that all works. And it's understood. I mean, like you say, there's. You just try to host a game. If you've got 6 or 7 guys turning up, trying to find a game that will suit everyone and that is available on the Tabletop Simulator can be a bit tricky. We've played, we quite like Chain of Command as an example of a game on the table. Perfect. Turn up, you've got your miniatures, etc. But playing it on Tabletop Simulator, it just doesn't quite have the same feel to it. It was good and we had a bit of fun, but it's just not moving figures about the tabletop. What we do think it seems to work well on is board games. I think it's anything that's a board game or similar to has a board game feel about it. So some of the naval stuff we've done, it works quite well on that as almost a board game tabletop simulator. But when it comes to miniatures, I think that's where it maybe stumbles a little bit. But
it was designed for board games like Monopoly, backgammon, chess, things like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. So from that side of things, it works. Yeah, it does what it says in the tin. I think maybe people are trying to shoehorn it to work for other things as well, and it doesn't. It's okay. It's good, but it doesn't scratch the itch of being able to push your lead around the table.
Okay. Guys, I want to change topics completely off track just for a second, because there's something I've always been trying to figure out that I've never been able to do. You say
UK is far better than the States.
You're on the wrong side of the pond.
We're all across some pond.
Oh, sorry, that's not what you.
No, I'm saying I completely off topic. You mentioned you played Chain of Command at Club Night.
Yeah.
My local wargaming group is not a local wargaming group. It's a bunch of. I go into the local hobby shop, bringing everything I need to run the game for both sides, and anybody who comes into the hobby shop can play. Now we have a lot of regulars who come by, but these are all, most of these guys are most of the players are young Marines who don't have the stuff. If they have, they've seen Warhammer 40K and that's it.
Mhm.
And I show up with a game of force on force with Russians and Marines of modern forces. They're like, ooh, great. So we get them in there and play different things. I love Chain of Command, but I've never been able to figure out how to play it with multiple players.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How do you? I mean, because the concept behind it's great, and the way it and the mood, but I've only been able to get it as a 2-player game to have it work. Do you guys play it with multiple players? And how do you make it work that way?
We do. We were just mentioning earlier on today. We do play it as multiplayer, but it doesn't. Yeah, it is far more suited to one-on-one. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy then. Okay.
Well, that doesn't mean you're not, but yeah.
Well, I mean, in that regard. Have you been talking to my wife again? Anyway.
Yeah, I think the Two Fat Larders do like a supplement, which is based on multiplayer games.
It's for big battles.
Yeah.
Battles. That's the baby.
Yeah.
Basically, it comes down to each player then has a force that is equivalent to what you would be playing in a normal night. So it's then multiple one player games really on one table. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I'm sorry, I went completely off topic, and normally my job is to keep the guests on topic. And okay, I blew it. But I'm curious about that. I was just because that is a game I enjoy, and I wanted to try moving that into a group thing.
Yeah, it's nice to hear somebody else say that they enjoy playing it, because obviously, the bolt action rules are good in their own right, but to certainly for us, we started off with like bolt action, which is played for many years, and then Chain of Command came along, and it's a completely different feel to a skirmish war game.
Well, the bolt action rules are good. I think they're good rules, and this is something that Warlord Games I feel does very well, is to get people into the hobby.
Into the hobby.
And get them into that. All of a sudden they can go, they can grab a box, they have everything right there, and here's now
the formula works.
The formula works. I'm not a fan of the codex and equal points and things like that. I like, Colin and I both enjoy the campaign approach to a game where what leads up to the battle and what forces actually wind up there. Are the troops fed? Are they, have all the logistics behind it to get into the battle? And that you never see even one-on-one battles. So in history, I've never seen an even one-on-one battle outside of a gladiator combat or a joust, and even gladiator combats weren't supposed to be one-on-one or evenly matched. But we're talking about doing so that's why I like it. Bolt action gets people into the game. Chain of Command then gets them to play as a simulation, a game that can be a simulation as well.
Yeah.
And as much as playing with toys can be a simulation.
Yeah. It's a crossover between sort of the Warhammer type games to it's the feed into to those other things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's kind of move on a little bit here on and talk about what's the future look like for you guys. What's happening in the future? And what's you guys for Oldmeldrum Group or clubs in general, what do you see as the future?
I think that we might struggle at some point to keep membership. It is going to be a challenge attracting people to, if you like, the physical three-dimensional side of wargaming in its broadest sense, with figures and vehicles and buildings and scenery, as opposed to playing first-person shoot 'em ups or online games. Traditionally, the way to get people has been when they get fed up playing the Warhammer, fed up playing the Warhammer 40,000, that we start hearing about other things. Sometimes with a gap. So the challenge is going to be making sure that we can keep that flow of people coming. I think that's something for lots and lots of clubs. we don't have many hobby shops up in this part of the world. We have one or two, and maybe that's the recruiting ground that we need to look at rather than wargame shows. So I think that's a challenge for us. Maybe not in the immediate future, but over the next few years, is keeping the flow of people coming to the club.
Well, I know everybody talks about the aging of the hobby, but I do see folks coming into it. But most of the folks I see coming in are, you see a small group of 20s and teens and 20s coming in, but I see a lot of folks who are coming in who are in their 40s, and so where they're suddenly, I'm too old for Warhammer type but it does seem, and we have to, whether you like Games Workshop or not, you have to give them credit. They've done a phenomenal job of marketing and of drawing folks in. You look at small retailers, though, you talked about hobby shops, and this is purely my opinion and based on anecdotal visual. Hobby shops are declining. There's not nearly the number there were years ago. Everybody wants to buy online. People go into a hobby shop, see something, and then go back and buy it online.
Yeah.
And that's a death knell for a hobby shop. So, they're recruiting grounds for us. Mm-hmm. So how do we, that's one thing and I don't think there's an answer for it today, but it's one thing we always have to keep thinking in our minds is how do we get around that? And how do we keep the message? How do we proselytize our hobby?
Yeah, I mean, we are a niche environment, quite a unique. I guess you could say that with all sort of hobbyists, I suppose. But the whole social aspect of it is crucial if you want to be playing those figure-based games. If we don't get a solution and get back to normality with socializing, then, as Stuart says, it's going to be a struggle for everybody globally as a hobby, because going to the club meets or going to a big meet somewhere in a nice big hotel or something like that is very much like you say, it's the recruiting ground for the hobby.
Right. Well, you said something I want to point out. You said, socialization back to normal, which is right, because we have to be face to face to move the little figures around and roll the dice and see that and laugh about it and joke about it and talk.
The expression on Ross's face is his Imperial Guard disappears.
Exactly. Yeah. That is exactly what we want to see. You need, and when that one person says anything but a one, and of course you roll nothing but ones. We get that.
The war, yeah.
But how can we use technology then? Because like Zoom, all right, is a great tool. I've seen Skype, all these different online, what was the one, Discord, all these. How can we use that technology to help build on the future of a club? Can we use that technology?
Well, I think we have to. I think we have to look at these potential technology solutions. I've just set a game up in the room, one of the rooms here, and you can play it solo. You can go through the rules, but unless we've got a format like this where we can share, the game really doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that. But I'm thinking about beyond. What happens when COVID is over, and you can go back to wherever you guys. And that was a question I didn't ask. Where you guys game, but I'll get to that in a bit. But wherever you go to, wherever you game, where you get to, wherever you game to, you game at. Can you use the technology like this to help promote the hobby, or help promote the grab?
I think we all work, and certainly my company is a global company, and we're now talking about not having offices and people working at home and doing meetings with Skype and Microsoft Team or Zoom or whatever it is. So we have to start thinking out the box. We have to start thinking, what is the best way? What is the way forward? And we have some members, the younger members, Tim and Dave. They've got brand new families, right? So they may not be able to come on a Tuesday, yeah, but they may be able to be somewhere, even babysitting, where they can watch a Zoom or something like that. So they can actually keep that interest going. So yes and no, I think it is something that we will certainly need to think about going forward.
Yeah, I think the digital side of things, the social media, the blogging, the websites, and the stuff that you touched on, the stuff that Ross does, that's the way of broadcasting it out to as wide an audience as possible. What we've got to think about is how we enable people to take part. And I think we've all done more video conferences and more web conferences and Skype and Teams and Zoom and whatever than we've ever done in our lives before. But they've all worked, more or less. The fact that we're talking we're talking across 3 different time zones right now is remarkable, that we can see each other and talk to one another clearly. What we haven't tried is actually playing a game on the tabletop traditionally with someone joining in by Zoom or whatever. That's something we've got to do. But the fact that somebody can join in and have a video conference and we can chat away, that works. And I think that's something we probably will do. Maybe not regularly, but we will probably keep up. We will probably keep up playing Tabletop Simulator. Those type of things are going to be with us now. We've learned how to use them. Those are tools for the future.
Yeah. I find that Tabletop Simulator, what I've found is because you can save, you don't need to worry about unpacking a game, getting it on the table, and then thinking, brilliant, I've managed to get 2 turns, I need to pack everything away and go home again. You can just go click, save, done, and then you can come back to it a week later, a month later, whatever, and you can play it. So that I think campaign-wise and things like that, there's a lot of potential to run campaigns and use that technology to do a lot of the admin for you, which we can then run into the weekly games, the monthly games that we do. So yeah, it's just looking at the new technology that's out there and looking how can we make this work. And I think the situation we're in is kind of forcing us to do that, which it's a good thing, I suppose, to do. It's a situation we don't want to be in, but hey, let's make the best of it.
It's going back to a subject we were talking about earlier on, how do we get our name out there? We've been asked by local societies, historical societies, to actually do. There's a number of local battles that we've had around this area, and we've actually put on models and scenarios for the public to actually come and watch, and that might be something that we could still continue to do, but in this type of format or a video type format, or going around to the schools and there's a battle outside here, just outside the village, with William Wallace, and do the kids in their local school know about it? Well, they might do, but that's maybe something that we can do is create these historical videos for bringing up the interests of the young kids.
There you go. Okay. I did want to jump back. One thing nobody touched on. Where do you guys wargame at? Where do you meet at? Do you have a building, or do you have a rec center or leisure center?
No, we have in Oldmeldrum we have the Royal British Legion, which is the old ex-servicemen's.
Right.
Okay. So we've been there. We've been there for quite a number of years. We did actually start off in Alistair's, the oldest member. We used to go to his house. but we felt as we starting to grow that we needed another space for that. Right. So we've been at the Legion now for quite a number of years, and it's plenty of room for what we need. We have storage there, which they've been very good about, and let us store some terrain and odd bits of figures and stuff like that. So it for us it works. We've tried other venues, but again, we don't have the storage because we're starting to build up an awful lot of material. Storage is quite a big thing for us, but we like it also because it's the British Legion. We'd like to support them as an organisation. I say we have done displays for them, Remembrance Days. In fact, we were supposed to be doing one for VE Day, Victory in Europe Day.
Yep.
We were going to do a scenario for that people could just walk around and have a display and just see how sort of things that we could put on. So we enjoy doing things like that. But yeah, no, it's the British Legion, Oldmeldrum.
Okay. Yeah, I'm well familiar with the British Legion. Very good organization, and definitely deserves a lot of support. So, but yeah, I was just curious about that because I've seen different things in different groups and just was curious. Well, folks, pretty much we've kind of covered everything that I had on my notes here to kind of go through, and I really appreciate the amount of input you guys have had. And what we'll be doing here is I'll wrap this up and we'll put everything together. We'll post it out there. If you guys, if you don't mind, I'm going to put a link to your website in my show notes, and make mention to that. I will also let folks know if anybody's up in your area of Scotland on a Tuesday night. I hope you guys would welcome him in for a game.
Absolutely.
No, I'd definitely think that's good. You guys sound like you have some good ideas, and you have put on some good games in that. So, Colin, did I miss anything or any questions on your end?
Nope, not that I see.
Okay. Well, then what I'm going to do then, folks, is our next episode. What is our next episode? Who do we have lined up next for the next time? Colin, do you remember?
I do not at the moment, no.
I will post it on the show notes as well, because I know we already have our next guest lined up for the show. We're taping in 2 weeks. But for Ross, Stuart, and Mike, thank you so much for joining us on today's call. And for the rest of you folks, thank you for listening in to Across the Pond Wargamers. We do appreciate it. Thanks for listening. This has been Across the Pond Wargamers, copyright 2020, produced by Gary Grimes and Colin Grimes. Original music was written and performed by Brian Stolfa.